Thank you very much. Good morning, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues and guests. Welcome to Budapest, welcome to Hungary. We are delighted that you have taken the time to attend this international workshop and increase its professional importance and prestige by your presence. The Ministry of Public Administration and Justice and the Institute for Public Policy Research are honored to host you. We are grateful to the Central European Initiative for its help in making this workshop happen. Coming together for so many countries today is an evidence of our commitment to share new ideas on Central and East European cooperation and demonstrates our joint efforts to make this region secure, socially attractive, and economically flourishing. Ladies and gentlemen, looking at the list of workshop participants and the topics of their presentations, one can expect to get an inside view of well-qualified experts and researchers on vital policy issues. Therefore, if you allow me, I wouldn't concentrate on specific policy issues. Instead, I intend to outline why Central and Eastern Europe matters so much to Hungary and me personally, and why my government believes in reinvigorating cooperation among our countries. It is my conviction that Western Europe somehow misinterprets the current situation and underestimates the potential of our region. Contemporary Western European thinking of Central and Eastern Europe is still dominated by clichés originating in the early 20th century. They see us as a troublesome region with only a few positive and considerably more negative attributes. Have you noticed, for example, that populism, nationalism, and anti-Semitism are terms almost exclusively evoked in Central and East European politics? Has it come to your attention that the incontestable presence of the radical right is only worrying when it is discussed in relation to our region? Why do you think that in nearly every case, the negative aspects of Europe's 20th century history should only be called to one's mind when Central and Eastern Europe is mentioned? Surely I'm not saying we are faultless, but in many cases, our countries have been more active and in some respects more successful than West European ones, be it in terms of structural reforms and crisis management, historic reconciliation, or rebuilding strategic partnerships. Dear guests, the two-day workshop will host a remarkably wide range of decision makers, researchers, policy analysts, and advisors from across East, Central, and Southeast Europe. Our guests have different backgrounds, and they may or may not agree with each other on several issues. Yet their presence and commitment to joint thinking prove that our region is much more than a geographic term, that our region has a story to tell. A story for those who are ready to make efforts to understand our countries beyond catchy newspaper headlines worded in distant capitals and photo reports edited so that the frame of an allegedly troublesome region can be reinforced. We are hosting this event because my government and the people of Hungary are among those ready to contribute to a deeper understanding of Central and East European politics and societies. Central and East and Southeastern Europe makes the European continent economically, culturally, and even politically richer and stronger. We were unfortunate enough to experience what an isolated and weakened Central and Southeastern Europe means. It becomes pre-totalitarian ideologies, ethnic hatred, and violence. The European Union must understand how serious a threat this is to our democracies. Brussels must see how vital it is for the entire European community to tackle the challenges of our region. EU leaders should recognize their own role and responsibilities in helping Central and Southeastern Europe get over the adverse historical legacies to accomplish successfully the historically unprecedented transformation of our economies, politics, and societies. Your Excellencies, dear guests, The Hungarian presidency of the Central European Initiative is fully aware of the importance of a renewed dialogue in this part of Europe. This is why we have organized this workshop, so that it includes representatives from East Central European countries as well as the Balkans. We decided to invite Central European Initiative members and non-members alike, because the more decision makers and researchers we bring together, the stronger our voice will be in shaping West European thought of and visions on our region. My government truly believes in the revival of the Central and Southeast European region. We fully understand and accept the importance of Euro-Atlantic integration, yet we are also aware of our joint regional interests and responsibilities in healing long and hitherto unresolved grievances. We have known each other for long. We have lived through hard times. We understand each other and we share fundamental ideas and values. I'm sure that we can contribute to a more competitive Europe together. In fact, I'm convinced that this two-day workshop will outline the remarkable list of reforms accomplished, some of which may be worth of a greater attention of the West European governments. I wish you all a fruitful, invigorating discussions and thought-provoking debates. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I am truly glad to be here and to have the opportunity to share my thoughts on the crisis. So 5 years on and Europe is still in crisis, but I think the question is crisis, what kind of crisis? When you remember just the mid-70s very famous song of the Supertramp, is the question, what crisis do we have? And I do agree with Margaret Thatcher when he said that economic problems never start with economics. They have deeper roots in human nature and in politics, and they don't finish at economics either. So what we have is a crisis with many phases, not just economic, but also political crisis. And this crisis has, as I mentioned before, many phases, such as we have economic crisis also with the euro. Euro is first of a construct, because euro itself is established without fiscal union and without the fiscal system. So it is also a political side of this euro crisis is more or less an integration question. We have the so-called debt crisis, which is because many countries are highly and hugely indebted. But the question is why they are indebted. And the reason is rather political. I would say the reason for it, the debt-financed welfare state. There are many questions today that how the welfare state is a model for Europe or not. But I think the question is this welfare state based on healthy fundamentals, or it is really a debt finance? The problem is, anyway, with the welfare state that it has been in the last decade debt financed. We have also a crisis according to the competitiveness. That means there are a huge competitiveness gap in Europe, in particular between North and South. You can translate also this kind of crisis in economic terms as a balance of trade crisis. But the reason for it, why some countries are not so competitive, is also a political question. I would say, I think in this crisis, the term is well known, this regulatory capture and so on. Many countries, in many countries, the state were captured in the last decade, and just think of the very rigid regulation for labor market. In many countries, in particular in southern Europe, and that is why they were not so competitive. So over the past 5 years, when we look back just the 5 years, economic policy has swung like a pendulum from Keynesian response to the 2008 credit crunch to the criminalization of Keynes, with current emphasis on austerity measures. So I would say what we had in the last 5 years is a jukebox economy. You know, you put a dime in the jukebox and you will hear the song immediately. the politicians like very much this, just to put one button at the economic regulation, and after that you will get the results. So I think what we had in the last 5 years, at the very beginning the answer was stimulus packages in many countries. And after that it had the consequence, the huge increase of debt. And in the years 2010, 2011, it was a time for austerity measures. So I would say rather criminalization of Keynes, or sometimes I had the feeling we are living in a time of Dostoevsky, crime and punishment. So you have to keep the budget deficit with any efforts what you have. And later on, many central banks started the so-called quantitative easing when Mario Draghi said within our mandate the ECB is ready to do whatever it takes to preserve the euro. And after that he said that, and believe me, it will be enough. So I think also the central bank's quantitative easing was a model. But the problem with that all these measures with the logic of the jukebox economies don't really touch the real problems of the crisis. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the crisis has many phases, not just economic but also political crisis. So I think we had this debate in Europe at the moment between austerity and growth, or put it simply, there is a shift from spending our way out of the crisis to saving our way out of it. But looking at Europe, however, I think that austerity policies are losing its credibility at the moment. Losing its credibility with the market, which are rather confused by this measure. Losing credibility with the general public, because the general public suffers from these measures. And even academics often highlight that these measures could be self-defeating. But one lesson we have learned in Hungary is that the debate on austerity versus growth is missing the real point. I think it is a misleading debate. I know that since the French election we have the debate in Europe, austerity versus growth, but I think it is rather a misleading debate and really is missing the real point, because of course we need fiscal stability. It is an indispensable prerequisite for a healthy, I would say healthy and not debt-financed and debt-funded growth. And what more, we need structural reforms too, at the same time to make our economies more competitive. I agree with you when you said that we need also growth and reforms which lead to the growth. So the main question, how can we achieve fiscal stability and at the same time the reforms what we need? Now in Hungary we introduced in the past couple of years I think 4 main reforms. One is the reforms according to the I would say institutional reforms. To have the institutional framework and to have the institutions and rules which make it possible that the deficit will be below 3% and also the debt to GDP ratio will be decreased. Just one point, for example, the debt break. We inherited, for example, a very high debt level because we hadn't had a debt break before. But when we compare, for example, in Poland they have the debt break for 14 years, and they have the debt to GDP ratio about 55%. So we need these institutions, and we implemented these institutions such as debt break. The second point is where we carried out many reforms and it was discussed widely in Europe, is the tax part and the tax reforms. With the tax reforms we had 2 main aims and policies. One is sharing the burden of the risk and the burdens and the risk of the crisis. We are in the crisis, and I think that there are no other possibility than to share the burden and the risk of the crisis. And unfortunately, there are not too many players in this game how to share the risk. There's the state, the population, and the business sector, not more. And normally the state doesn't have money. The state has only the power to impose taxes and collect the money, and we hope that it will be used in a very effective way. So what we introduced, maybe a new model of how can we share the burden and the risk of the crisis. And the second, in field of tax reform, we introduced a new tax mix, which we call is rather growth-friendly. That means lower taxes on labor and income, and because we need to balance the budget, we raised some taxes on consumption. The third pillar of the reform was the labor market reform. I think that is the most important part of the reform. It was the core of the whole philosophy. The logic behind it, how can we create more flexible labor market regulation, and how can we achieve a better matching skills to the economic demand, and that was the core of the whole policies. And just one thing to say that as a feedback, one of our bilateral chambers made also a survey in the last year, and it was recognized that now the labor market regulation in Hungary is according to the respondents, or the respondent companies operating here in Hungary, said that as the fourth best in Central and Eastern Europe, in that case Central and Eastern Europe from Baltic to Montenegro. And the fourth pillar, I think that is the topic of our main chunk of this conference, is the public sector and regional reforms. We had the logic here, how can we use the economic rule, that means the economy of scale in public sector and regional reforms. And as far as I see from economic point of view, this reform is very, very efficient and went in a very good way. So in Hungary, during the course of the past couple of years, I think we accomplished both these tasks. That means to have a fiscal stability. Deficit is clearly below 3%. The debt to GDP ratio is decreasing. And at the same time, we carried out the most important reform. I mentioned this four field. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are recognizing that we need also a third pillar. While stability and reform are essential for a healthy economy, they are not enough to bring about strong recovery and sustainable growth. What is needed, I think, as a third pillar is a renewable, I would say, development policy, or I would say rather a renewal of the industrial policies. So focus on more specifics of innovation, infrastructure, investment, and development policy. The debate on austerity versus growth, I think, is about the fear of a race to the bottom, and the future is this framework, I would say, rather fiscal stability, reforms, and development policy, or innovation, if you like it, is about the chances in a race to the top. Thank you very much.